Hi everyone, David Jackson here with slingandstonemarketing.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create pop-ups using Elementor Pro so that you can do things like create an email opt-in box so that you can integrate with your email provider, create contact forms for people to fill out to submit messages to you, create a hello bar that displays at the top or the bottom of the page so that you can do things like a cookie consent notification. There's also age restriction that has a user confirm their age before they see any of your content, and you can even create a login page for people who have paid to view premium content or are part of a monthly paid subscription. I'm also going to show you how you can use pre-made templates and customize them so that they fit the look and feel of your current website. I'll also cover the different settings and triggers and conditions for the pop-up to show, so that way you won't have to worry about annoying your visitors when they come to your website. But first, if you are new to the channel and want to learn about the tools and strategies to help you market your business online, consider subscribing and click the bell so you'll get notified when I upload new videos. You can also find notes and links to the resources I mentioned in the description below, and if there are any topics you want me to cover in future videos, let me know in the comments. Now before we get started, I just wanted to quickly mention that this is an Elementor Pro feature, so you will not be able to use pop-ups if you have the free version of Elementor. If you use the link below, it'll take you to their pricing page where you can see that for one site it only costs $49 per year, where if you want it for 3 sites then it'll cost $99 per year, and you can have it on up to 1,000 sites for only $199 per year. And it really doesn't matter which plan you pick, just pick the right one for you. If you only have one site, then it makes sense to just go for the personal. If you have 2 or 3 sites, then go ahead and get the plus if you want to use Elementor Pro on all 3 sites. Or if you just want to try it out on one website, you can sign up for the personal plan. And if you want, at any time, you can always upgrade and they will prorate the price for you. And there is also another Elementor link down in the description below, which will take you to the comparison page where you can see all of the different features between the free and the pro version, so you know what the differences are, what you're getting with the pro version. And as you can see from this page, you are getting a lot of things with the pro version. Just about anything that you need to build a website. You have full access to their theme builder. If you're setting up an e-commerce website with WooCommerce, you have full functionality with the Pro version. So there's just a lot of stuff that comes with the Pro version and a lot of value for the money that you're spending on a yearly basis. Once you have Elementor Pro installed on your WordPress site, for those of you that are going to be using pop-ups in order to collect email addresses to build your email list, one of the things that you'll need to do is integrate the email service provider with Elementor Pro. So in order to do that, we're going to come over here to the left where it says Elementor, click on Settings, and then go over up to the top where it says Integrations and click on that tab. And this is where you will find all of the integrations for other outside services that integrate with Elementor Pro. So let's say, for instance, that I have a GetResponse account as my email provider. So what I would need to do is I can click on this link here that says API key. That'll take me over to the GetResponse website where I can copy the API key that they give me for my account, and I would paste that here and then click on Validate API key. Once that's done, now GetResponse and Elementor Pro can then talk to each other, and Elementor Pro can send all of the email information that I collect on my website into my GetResponse account. So now let's create our first pop-up. What we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the left where it says Templates, and then click on Pop-ups. And that will take us to this page where we're going to click on Add New Pop-up. Now the template we want to use is the pop-up template, which is already selected. And we're going to give our pop-up template a name. So I'm just going to put in Demo Pop-up. Then click on Create Template. And that will load up Elementor for us. And now we have a bunch of pre-made templates that we can choose from. They have different styles, different designs, they have different purposes, but no matter which template we use, we don't even have to use a template if we don't want to. We can create one from scratch. But if you're not the creative type, then maybe you want to start off with a pre-made template and then just customize it so that it will fit your website. Also, if we go all the way up to the top, we can see over here in the upper left where it says category, there's a drop-down menu, and we can actually pick pop-ups depending on their category. So if you want like a classic pop-up, you can click on that and it will filter out the templates to only show you pop-ups that are like your classic style, the one that kind of just pop up in the middle of the page and ask for an email, or show you a coupon or something like that. Or we can choose one that flies in from the left or from the right or even from the bottom. So you can go through and you can see that there's a full screen. So this can be used for things like the age verification, or if you have like a login that you want people to go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose classic, and I'm going to take a look at some of their pre-made templates for that. And I'm going to choose one that kind of sticks out to me. Let's see, if I want to do something that will collect people's emails for my newsletter. So let's just see if there's one that is for a subscription. Let's try this one, join the club. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, so when you click on it, it will show you a little preview of what the pop-up will look like. You can see that this has a background image. It's got the subscribe now where a person can put in their email address. So I think I'm going to go with this one. So once you find one that you like, you're going to just go ahead and click on insert, and it will create the template for you. So now we're in the Elementor editor, and you have all of your Elementor options here on the left, just as you would in the regular Elementor editor. This is just for the pop-up, so you can use any of these within your pop-up, just as you would if you were building a page on your website. So again, this is just really powerful. I mean, you have all of these options that you can use within your pop-up. I mean, you can do practically anything in these pop-ups that Elementor can do on a regular page builder. So you can go ahead and play around with it, or you can start building a pop-up just the way that you want, putting things in there that may not be in a pre-made template, and customize it just the way that you want. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over some of the settings for the pop-up so that you can see how you can customize it for yourself. So I'm going to come down here to the lower left to the gear where it says settings and click on that. And the first thing we have is the layout of the pop-up. So here it's at a set width in pixels, but if you want, you can change that to the viewport width. And what that does is it changes it to like a percentage. So as I move the slider here, you can see that the number is changing, and that's the percentage of the viewport. So I'm at 100%, which means that it would take up the entire screen, or if I wanted to only be 50% of the viewport, I can either slide it or I can just come over here and type in 50%. And the width would be only 50% of the viewport area. So I'm just going to keep it as pixels, is what it was before. And I think it was at like 785 or something like that. So we'll just keep it there. That looks pretty good. For the height, it's set to fit to content. So as you add more elements in here, and if it gets longer, then the height will automatically adjust to the content height. If you want to change that, you can have it fit to screen, which now makes it take up the entire height of the screen that the person is looking at. Or you can set it to a custom height, which again, you have the option of it being in pixels, or you can use the viewport height, a percentage of that. So I'm just going to keep it as fit to content. And then for the position, we have an option where we can have it just be positioned on the left, in the center, or on the right. And then we also have the same options for the vertical position. It can be the top, the bottom, or the center. Since this is a classic pop-up, they're generally going to pop up in the center of the screen, so I just keep both of those as center. Then the next option we have is the overlay, and that's basically this dark background here. So we can either have that be shown, or we can take that away, in which case the person will still be able to see the entire web page that they're on behind it. And that doesn't really make the pop out to the person, so I like to have the overlay on, so that way it draws the focus to the pop-up and a person won't get distracted by the things that are behind it. You also have the option to show the close button, which is the X that is over here. So there are some instances where you might not want to show the close button, other instances where you will. I generally like to have it on, but if you turn it off, then you also want to make sure that you have some other way for the person to close the pop-up. Otherwise, they'll just leave your website because they want to continue on and not deal with the pop-up. So it's always generally good to have a close button for the person to use. Then for the entrance animation, you have a bunch of different options here. So I don't like my pop-ups to do anything super special. I generally like them to just kind of fade in pretty quickly, or just kind of just pop up. But you have all of these different options, so you can go through all of these different animations for it popping in and choose the one that you like. The same thing with the exit animation. You have all of these different options for when the person closes the pop-up. It can go through an animation when it's closing. You can also change the animation duration. So this is like how long you want the animation to take before it comes to a complete stop. So you can speed it up, you can slow it down. Again, it's completely up to you. You can play around with it and choose whichever ones you like. Then the next thing we have are the general settings. So this is just the title of our template. So we named it, or I named it, the demo pop-up at the beginning. If you want to change it, you can. We're going to keep it as a draft for right now, and you don't have to worry about the HTML tag. That's just some pretty advanced stuff. If you're familiar with HTML, you can have it be a specific HTML tag. And then you have the preview settings, where you can select to preview what the pop-up will look like on a specific page. So you have all these different archive pages. You can use a single page or a 404 page, so that you can see what your pop-up will look like on that type of page. Then the next thing we're going to do is come up here where it says style. We're going to click on that. So here we have our styles of our pop-up. We can set the background type. Right now the classic is selected, but if we want to create a gradient, we have the options to do that there. If we want to change the background image, we can just click on the choose image. It'll open up our media library, and we can choose an image to replace the one that came pre-made. We can position the background image. We have all of these different options here. You have the repeat, the size. If we want to create a border, we can have a solid border around our pop-up, a double line, dotted. We have our border types here. Then once you choose the border, you can choose what the width could be. So let's say we want 5. You can increase it, decrease it. You can change the color of the border. If you want to have a border radius, you can set that there. If you want there to be a box shadow, you can set the color of the box shadow and all of the settings for that. So you have a lot of really granular customizations that you can make to your pop-up in the style. So I suggest that you play around with these. You can see what each and every single thing does right here live. If you want to get rid of the little settings area, you can click on the arrow here, and it'll kind of just make your pop-up full screen. Let's bring that back. Next we have the overlay, which is this back area here. So these are the controls for that. In the settings tab, it showed us whether or not we wanted the overlay to show. Since I always recommend that you have it show so that your pop-up can stick out even more, these are the settings for what the overlay will look like. And you have your classic background with a solid color, but if you want to have a gradient for your overlay, you can set that up as well. I'm just going to keep it as a classic regular color, dark color with an opacity, but you can change the color if you want here. You can also change the opacity by doing that. So, you know, again, you can just go around and play around with it and choose whatever it is that you would like to have for your website. Then for the close button, you have the position to have it inside or outside. You can change the position of it. You can either, you know, use a little slider here, or you can just put in a number and it will show you how it affects the close button. Just going to keep that at 0. You have the option to do it by percentage or by pixels. You can also change the color of the close button. If you want there to also be a background and its size, you can do all of that here. And that's when it's just normal. And then you also have an option of what you want it to look like when the mouse is hovering over the close button. So if you want it to change to a different color or become a different size or have a background color, you can do all of that here. So then next we will go to the Advanced tab. And so here you have the option to show the close button after a certain amount of seconds. So let's say, for instance, your pop-up comes up and you don't want anyone to close it really quickly. You want it to be like maybe, I don't know, 5 seconds or something like that before you want them to be able to close it. Now you don't want this to be too long because, you know, you don't want a pop-up to show up and someone's trying to look for how to close it and there's no close button, and so then they just wind up leaving your site. So if you're going to use this option, I suggest that you only use like a couple seconds for the close button to show up. Then you also have an option where the pop-up will automatically close after a number of seconds. You definitely don't want to use this option if you are having someone fill out a form, or if you are having them put in their email address to join your email list, because the last thing you want is for them to start typing it out and they might be a slow typer or something, and you put in here 10 seconds and the pop-up will automatically close, and they're in the middle of putting in their email address and now they can't sign up to your email list because the pop-up closed before they were done. So just use these settings with caution and think about what you're using the pop-up for and what will be best for the user. Another option is to prevent closing the overlay. So what this means is that by default a person will be able to close the pop-up by clicking or tapping on the overlay section, but you can change that. If this is on, then that means that if they click on the overlay section, then that will not close the pop-up. They will actually have to click on the close button. So this is good to use if someone is like on a mobile device, because sometimes I know with me, sometimes my finger or my hand might, you know, touch the screen or something like that, and that would be in the overlay area, and that would close the pop-up because it sensed a tap on the overlay portion. So if you're going to be using this on mobile, or if a lot of your visitors are on mobile, you might want to prevent closing the pop-up by them touching the overlay section and just have them close it using the close button. Then next you have prevent closing on escape key. I like to keep this off. This is for people that are using a desktop. They might hit the escape key just out of habit to try and close things. So if they hit the escape key, then that will close the pop-up by default. But if you don't want them to use the escape key, then you can switch that to on. Next we have disable page scrolling. So this means that while the pop-up is showing, that a person will not be able to scroll the page. They will have to close the pop-up to go back to being able to scroll the content. This is actually pretty good to have on so that a person will not lose their place. Like if they're reading an article or something like that and the pop-up appears, then if they tried scrolling or something like that, or accidentally started scrolling, the content doesn't make them lose the place where they were reading, so that when they close the pop-up, they'll be right back where they left off. Then you have this option of avoid multiple pop-ups. This is something that I like to have on if you're going to have a lot of pop-ups and have all of these different conditions for pop-ups to appear This way you don't have an instance where you might have inadvertently set up conditions where it's possible for a specific page to have like 2 or 3 pop-ups show up at different times, and you don't want that to happen to a visitor. That would just really annoy them. So I like to have this on, so then that way if there are multiple conditions where different pop-ups would appear, whichever pop-up shows up first, I just want the person to see that one and then not be bothered with other pop-ups that could potentially occur later. And then next we have where you can open the pop-up by a CSS selector. So this is a little advanced. This is for people that are familiar with HTML and CSS coding. So within the code of the HTML and CSS, you can set IDs and classes. So what you can do here is you can have a pop-up appear once a person clicks on a specific element, HTML element that has an ID attached to it or a specific class attached to it. And when they click on that area, then the pop-up will show. And it has a little note here that in order to do this, you will also have to set this in your pop-up conditions, which we will get to later in this video. And then down here we have the margin and the padding. Again, you can put in the values here and just play around with that. You can also set up CSS classes for your pop-up. In this case, for those of you that are familiar with CSS, you are not going to use the dot. So you're just going to put the class name. And then lastly, we have custom CSS. If there's styling that you want to have that Elementor does not allow you to do within the settings, style settings, then you can have your own custom CSS do it here for you. It's just like doing CSS coding in a regular CSS file for those of you that are familiar with CSS rules and everything. This is all some pretty advanced stuff, so if you have no idea what I'm talking about with CSS coding, just don't even worry about it and skip over this. So these are your customization settings, and you can go through and you can change the text, you can change the colors. You have all of these different options that are available to you to customize the pop-up to look the way that you want it to look. One of the things that I want to go over before moving on is some of the form submission settings that you have available. So I'm going to come over here in the pop-up and I'm going to click on the edit for the form. And over here we see that we have the settings for the form. We have the form name, which you can change to be whatever you want it to be. And then you can add fields to your form. So right now this pre-made template only has the email field, but if I want to add like name or something, then I can do that here. So it's going to be text, the label is going to be name, placeholder we'll put first name, we'll say that it's required. Alright, so then we have that, and then we can change the order so that the name is on the top, and then they put in their email. Input size, we'll keep it as small. We can show the labels if we wanted to, where we have name and email. And we also can show a little required mark, which is a little asterisk right there. I'm going to turn both of those off. Then we have the submit button, which we can customize the text, the size, add an icon if we want. But this is where I wanted to get to, and that is the actions after submit. So once a person puts in their email and their name in this case, since I added the name field, and they click on the submit button, or in this case it's the come on in, what this will do is it will send an email to the WordPress administrator letting you know that somebody has submitted a form. But that's not the only thing that we want to do. So what we want to do is, since we integrated our email service provider, so I think in this case I use GetResponse as an example. So I would come down here to GetResponse, and that means what it's going to do is once someone submits the form, they're going to send the WordPress administrator an email, and then they're going to send the form information over to GetResponse. Right? And when I did that, this little area down here where it says get response appeared. So we'll come down here and we can click on that, and when we have our API key in, you'll see the options, and then you'll see lists that you can add it to. So these will be things that you have set up in your get response account, and you can choose where this information will be passed to, which list you want it to be added to. So then that way you have actions set up in get response saying, okay, when somebody's added to this list, then I want you to do these automated things. And so it can automatically send them their first email if you have an email sequence, or send them a coupon or something if you have a list where when people are added to that list, a coupon gets sent to them. So you have a lot of things that you can do when you have the email integration added to Elementor Pro. And it's not only to be used with just your email marketing provider. If I go back up to the actions after submit, I can have actions such as closing the pop-up. So if I go down here to where it says pop-up, now I have these pop-up options that just appeared. So if I open that up, I see that there's an action, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to close the pop-up. And then after it closes the pop-up, I don't want it to show the pop-up again. So I'll put that on as yes. So now the pop-up shows, somebody fills in their first name and their email. I'll get an email from WordPress saying that somebody signed up. Their first name and their email will get added to my get response list, and the pop-up will close and it won't show again. So once you've gone through and you made the customizations and you have it looking just the way that you wanted to on the desktop, the tablet, and the mobile devices, now it's time to publish it. So we're going to come down here and we're going to click on publish, and that is going to bring up our conditions, triggers, and advanced rules for our pop-up. So basically the conditions are where you want the pop-up to display. And you're going to come over here and you're going to click on add condition, and it's going to default to the entire site. So this basically says that this pop-up can appear anywhere on our site. But if you want this pop-up to appear on just like an archive page, then you have the option of choosing all archives or a specific type of archive. The same thing with a singular type. You have singular pages where you can have it be displayed. You can add multiple conditions. So let's say, for instance, that I want it to show on singular pages, on all the singular pages, but I also want it to show on a specific archive page. So let's say a specific category. And I'll put, let's see, I think that there is, we'll just put uncategorized. So this says that, all right, show up on all singular pages and show up on the uncategorized category page. Or you can do something like, let's say we want it to be on our entire site, but then there's specific pages where we don't want it to show up. So if there's only like a handful of pages or specific types of pages that we don't want our pop-up to show up, we will come over here to where it says include, and we will change that to exclude. So right now it's show up on the entire site, but we're going to exclude all archive pages. So this will give you an example of some of the conditions that you can have set up, and that is specifically for this one pop-up that you created. Every pop-up will have different conditions on where you can set for the pop-up to display, and this is one of the reasons why I said that it's a good idea to have that option to not show multiple pop-ups, because it can be really easy, especially with conditions like this, where you can trigger more than one pop-up to display, and you don't want that because that would just be really annoying to the visitor, and you don't want them to leave your site because of that. So once you have your condition set, we'll come down here and click on next. And if you want, you can also use these over here on the left. So if you made a mistake or you want to go back, you can just click on conditions to go back to conditions, and click on triggers to go to triggers. As for our trigger options, these are the options for when we want the pop-up to occur, right? So the conditions tell us kind of where we want it to show up on which pages, and the triggers are the things that are going to cause our pop-up to display. And our options are to have it display on the page load. So that means when somebody comes to a page on our website, then we can have it display right away, which is kind of what a lot of websites do, and it is annoying if someone is visiting your website for the very first time. They don't know anything about you. They may have come to your website from a search engine or something like that, and as soon as the page loads, they're hit with a pop-up that says, hey, sign up for our newsletter. And it's like, well, I don't know anything about your website. I don't know what kind of content you have. I don't even know if it's good. So why would I sign up for a newsletter? And then they'll just automatically close the pop-up, or they might just leave because they just got annoyed by it. So you might want to wait for the person to be on the page for like 30 seconds or something before you show them a pop-up. I generally don't use this option because even if you set it for something like 30 seconds, that doesn't mean that after 30 seconds a person is going to be engaged enough to want to sign up for your email or give you any kind of information, or they might not even be interested in like a coupon or something. So I don't ever put a setting for on page load. Some of the other options you have are on scroll, and what this means is like if someone were to come to your website and they're reading a blog post, well, if they scroll down like 50% of the page, that's an indication that you have their attention. That's an indication that they're interested in what is on your website. And so maybe in that case, you want there to be a pop-up. And you can set this to whatever percentage. You can put it down to like 80%. So if they scroll 80% down your page, then they're presented with a pop-up. Or if you want it to go up. All right, so what this means is that they've scrolled down, but as soon as they scroll up, that's when the pop-up will show. And then you have on scroll to element. And I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the video, where this is kind of a more of an advanced feature where if you know CSS rules and classes and IDs, you can set the class of an element so that when a person scrolls to an element that has that class, that's when the pop-up will show. So for those of you that are familiar with CSS coding, you're going to use the class name with the dot in this case. Then next we have the on click. So this is if a person were to click any number of times on the page. It doesn't have to be clicking on a link to go to another page. It can be a click anywhere on the page, whether the click does something or not. So this might be good if you have a website where a person might be looking at multiple images on a page, so they're clicking to see a bigger picture of the image, and they're not going to another page, but they're actively interacting with your website. And so let's say that after they click, 3 times or something like that, you think that you have them engaged enough to where you can show them to join your email list, or show them some information that they might be interested in. And then next we have after inactivity. So this is for when a person is probably on your website, they're reading an article, and then they get distracted and they go away, and then 30 seconds later you want a pop-up to show. It could be something like, hey, are you still there? Here's a coupon, or here's something that you might be interested in. If the person is like me, they might have multiple windows open and then they get sidetracked and jump to another window. And so then this way, after a certain amount of time goes by, when a pop-up shows, it might actually draw the person's attention back to that window and be like, oh yeah, I was over here on this website doing something, and then now you have their attention again. So that's a pretty cool thing that you can use as well. And then lastly, we have the on-page exit intent. And this is another one that you see a lot of times. This is when a person is on your website and then they go up and their mouse leaves the window to either close the tab or hit the back button or something like that. And once the cursor goes off of the page, then the pop-up shows. It's like, hey, before you go, here's 10% off on something, or here's something else that that you might be interested in. So that one is like almost like a last ditch effort to grab their attention again. That one's a little less annoying because they're already kind of intending to leave your website anyway. So it's not like your pop-up is going to cause them to leave. It's like they were already going to leave, and this is kind of like your little one last ditch effort to get them to do something else. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that one on for now, and I'm going to come down here and click on next. Then we have our advanced rules. And the first one is show after X page views. So this is good for when someone comes to your website. If they click on, in this case, 3 pages, then on the 3rd page, your pop-up will show. They've taken 2 actions with your website, so they're actively involved, they're actively engaged with your website. So, once they hit that 3rd page, they've already taken a couple steps with your website. And so that would be a good time to, invite them to join your newsletter. All right. Another option is to show after X sessions. So in this case, the first time that they come to your website, they'll browse, they'll click on things, they'll read, and then they'll leave. And then the next time they come to your website, you'll present them with a pop-up. All right. They're already familiar with you. They've already been there before. And so now they're back at your website, and you can have a pop-up that says, hey, welcome back. How would you like to be on our email list, so that you don't miss out on any new things that we put out there. All right, so this is a good way of not annoying them the first time that they come to visit, or even the second time. I mean, you can change this to 3 so that the pop-up doesn't show until the 3rd time that they visit your website. And then we have show up to X times. Right, so this is saying, okay, we're going to show your pop-up at most 3 times. So then after the 3rd time, we're just not going to show that pop-up anymore. So this is a good way of making sure that you really don't annoy them. A person doesn't want to see your pop-up 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Every time that they come to your website, they're seeing a pop-up or something like that. So this will make sure that you don't overload them with the same pop-up. Right, and then there's this option on when it's going to count as being shown. So I like to keep it on open, but you can have it on close, so that the only time that it counts as being shown is when the person closes the pop-up rather than it opening. But I like to, if I were to use this, then I would keep it on open. The next one is to show the pop-up when a person is arriving from a specific URL. So this is good in cases where, like, you have a YouTube channel like I do. A person is watching a video on your YouTube channel, and you have a link in the description that takes them to your website. Well, then you can put in here, if they come from youtube.com, then they'll be shown the pop-up. Right? If they're coming from anywhere else, then they won't see that pop-up. So this is really good and really powerful for you to be able to kind of put in some personalization in your pop-ups, like, hey, YouTube viewer, hey, notice that you came from YouTube. Here's a special or something for, all of my YouTube viewers, or something like that. Or if there's a special download that you mentioned in your YouTube video, you can use the pop-up that has a link to that download, so that when they come from YouTube and visit your page, the pop-up automatically shows there's that link that you promised them, and then they can download the guide or whatever it is that you promised them. Other options you have are to hide the pop-up if somebody comes from a specific URL. And you can also use the regular expressions, which is some pretty advanced stuff. All right, then next we have show when arriving from. So this is some pretty broad things. It's not specific as the one with showing from a specific URL. This is some general things. So you can have it show when people are arriving from a search engine, an external link, or an internal link. You can take out the internal link ones or external link and just have this pop-up show when people are coming from the search engine. Another option is to have it hide for logged in users. When you're collecting emails or something like that, you don't want the pop-up to show to people that are logged in because, well, they're logged in, so you already have their email address. So there's no point in showing a pop-up saying, hey, do you want to join our list? Give us your email. And they're like, well, I'm logged in. You already have my email. Like, why are you showing me this? So that's a good option to have. And you can have that set up for all users, or you can customize it for only specific types of users. But generally, if a person's logged in, then there really isn't a need for them to show a pop-up unless you have a specific pop-up that you want specific users to not see. And then lastly, we have show on devices. So you have the options of desktop, tablet, and mobile. So you might only want this pop-up to show up on the desktop or on mobile or on desktop and mobile, but not the tablet. So you can pick and choose which devices you want. All right, so after you've gone through and you have everything all set up and it's the way that you want it to be, then you click on Save and Close, and now your pop-up is live. So you can click on Have a Look, and that will take you to a little preview page. And I have it set to the pop-up won't display until I'm due an exit intent. So as soon as I move my cursor off there, boom, there you go. There's my pop-up. I can put in the name, the email, submit it, or I can click on the no thanks, I'm good, and that'll close it as well. So before I end this video, there's one more thing that I want to show you, and that is you also have an option to trigger a pop-up to show when somebody clicks on a button. And I want to show you how to do that really quickly. It's pretty simple. It's not something that is shown during the publish settings and that you do within the pop-up editor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that I have a demo landing page, right? And so what I want to have happen is when somebody clicks on this read and be inspired, I want my pop-up to show when they click on this button here. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go into the Elementor editor, and I'm going to come over here and click on the button, and that will bring up my button settings. And then here where it says link, it has this little hashtag right there, but I'm going to come over here to where it says dynamic tags, click on that, and I'm going to scroll down to under actions, and it says pop-up. So we're going to select that, and then we're going to come over here to the little wrench icon, and we're going to click on that so that we can look at the settings. And the action that I wanted to take is I wanted to open up a pop-up. And so I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to choose the pop-up. I think it was demo. Here it is, demo pop-up. I'm going to click on that. So now, let's close that. So now what this means is that when someone clicks on this button, the demo pop-up will show. They'll be able to put in their name, their email address, click submit, and then the pop-up will close. So now that that's done, I'm going to come over here, click on update, and I'm going to preview it. So if I come down, click on read and be inspired, boom, there's my pop-up. So it doesn't have to be buttons. You can do this for any link. So if you have a blog post and there's a text link in there that says, sign up for our email list, you can have that be a link, and that link can then just trigger a pop-up going through the exact same process that we did for the button. You're going to go over to the link, and instead of putting a URL there, you're going to put in pop-up. You're going to choose which pop-up you want to be displayed, click on update, and you're done. So now it'll be triggered when somebody clicks on it, and you don't have to worry about setting up any conditions in your publish settings, the things like the on-page load or scrolling or any of the stuff that we went through earlier in the video. You can just trigger a pop-up this way without any of those conditions. And with that, thank you all so very much for taking your time to watch this video. Don't forget to click the thumbs up and to subscribe. And if you were able to get a pop-up working on your website, leave a comment below and use the hashtag GiantSlayer. And until next time, go out and slay some giants.